Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, September 18th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma in for Maya Trabulsi. We begin with breaking news. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died. The Supreme Court says Ginsburg died of metastatic pancreatic cancer. She was 87. Ginsburg was appointed in 1993 by President Bill Clinton. In recent years, she has served as the most senior member of the court's liberal wing. Nicknamed RBG, she became the second of 4 female justices on the High Court. A staunch supporter of women's rights, gender equality, her life and times were portrayed in a feature film called The On the Basis of Sex, and in later years became a favorite of the younger generation. Her death now opens up a vacancy and could change the direction of the High Court. Again, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dead at age 87. Now to the latest on COVID-19 in San Diego. No legal action from the county against the state, at least for now. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session after state officials denied their request to eliminate hundreds of cases from San Diego State students that could be pushing us toward more restrictions. As KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us, some business owners are fed up.
If we have to close our indoor operations, I'm afraid we may have to close our entire operation, and permanently. I mean, we're down to it. It's it.
Todd Brown is the owner of Bubs at the Beach in Pacific Beach. They've pivoted to outdoor dining during the pandemic, but
it's not sustainable. That's our problem.
Brown says he and other owners are reaching a breaking point with looming restrictions that would once again close his dining room.
So what are my options? What do I like? If I'm the governor, I'm weighing good and bad options, what's viable and what's not every single day on the job. Well, that's all we're doing too.
Brown says he feels backed into a corner, and if indoor operations are forced to shut down next week, he may decide to stay open.
All I'm trying to do is survive as an operator. We've been a fixture for 22 years in Pacific Beach, and if they close us down next week and we choose to follow the mandate, I'm not sure we'll ever be able to open the doors again.
County officials say our case count is particularly high because of more than 700 San Diego State students testing positive, and Brown doesn't understand why the state won't make an exemption.
All we're asking for is a fair shake, and we're asking for the governor to basically hand the reins over to our county board of supervisors.
I would like the county to fight for us. I think for me as a business owner, is just more support financially has been the biggest issue.
Stephen Land is the owner of Landform Fitness in the College area. Right now, under the state's red tier, his gym can be open at a limited capacity, but if we hit the purple tier, he too would have to stop indoor operations.
Feeling for my employees, how if they're taken care of, paying all the bills. I still have all my merchant systems, everything, none of that stuff stops. And so, yeah, it would be, I'm reaching the end, basically. Yeah, there's not much more time. I could just keep winging this thing.
Land says his customers have been understanding with closures, and he's been able to move some classes online, but he says it's just not sustainable.
Something that I've worked my entire life to get to is just basically gone, and I literally can't talk to anybody that has any answer for me.
So there's a lot that can happen before we land in the purple tier next week and possibly see more restrictions coming back. 1, our case count could simply improve. 2, county officials say they're still lobbying the state to try to have those more than 700 cases from SDSU students removed. And 3, we know the county is meeting again in closed session on Monday. There could be some legal action coming out of that, and they also have a public meeting on Tuesday to discuss this very issue. In the College area, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A wildfire sparked during a gender reveal party has now killed a firefighter. It happened yesterday in the San Bernardino National Forest as crews battled the El Dorado fire. The firefighter's death is under investigation. Wildfires in California this year are blamed for at least 25 deaths. As firefighters work towards full containment of the Valley Fire, they've updated their map. The fire is about 570 acres smaller than previously thought, at just over 17,000 acres. At last check, it's 90% contained. 30 homes and 31 other buildings were destroyed, while 11 structures were damaged. As KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer tells us, the San Diego County District Attorney has a new warning for residents.
District Attorney Summer Stephan warned fire victims of scammers and businesses looking to take advantage of their situation. Common forms of disaster-related scams are done through unlicensed contracting and price gouging, and doing so can end in prosecution.
Our investigators are in the area. They're notifying residents and neighbors so that they can look out for each other. And if we get these reports, we will prosecute and hold people accountable.
In the aftermath of natural disasters, debris clearing scams often surface. Stephan says not to provide payment up front and to be sure to ask where the debris is being taken.
Other than offering to reconstruct or fix the damage, there are contractors that offer debris removal, and they also demand payment up front, and they pretend to give a good deal. In the end, either they will not do the debris removal, or they will take it and essentially dump it on a neighbor's property or dispose of it in a non-environmentally lawful manner.
Additionally, it is illegal for a business to increase their prices for essential goods or services by more than 10% during a state of emergency. Doing so could lead to 1 year imprisonment in county jail and a fine of up to $10,000.
We are not going to tolerate victims being re-victimized by unscrupulous contractors or businesses or scammers.
Investigators will go door to door and post signage to alert residents of potential threats. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Elected officials received an audit of San Diego County's Regional Transportation Planning Agency, SANDAG. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says allegations of improper bonuses and severance payments got mixed reviews.
Since this is our first audit presentation,
the 140-page audit found fault with how SANDAG hires and promotes staff, usually from within, and how in the past, departing top-level executives received large severance payments without proper oversight from the board of directors. The board is made up of elected officials from throughout the county. The agency's management agreed with some of the findings, like that it needs to improve record keeping, but it fiercely disputed allegations that the payments or promotions were outside the authority of Executive Director Hassan Ekrada. Chula Vista Mayor Mary Salas says she thinks management followed the existing policies set by previous boards, but
if we're not happy with those policies and procedures that allowed for this, then this is an excellent time for the board to regain control and examine those policies and then put forward the recommendations that we want.
Other board members voiced harsher criticisms of SANDAG management. The board ultimately voted to direct SANDAG staff to come up with an action plan that implements the recommendations the board members agreed with, and it decided to hire an independent law firm to review the audit's conclusions. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
A new lawsuit claims that Customs and Border Protection knew it was breaking the law when it began turning away asylum seekers at the southern border. Here's KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler.
The class action lawsuit centers on the thousands of asylum seekers who have been turned away at ports of entry across the southern border since late 2016. They're then made to put their names on a list and wait in border cities like Tijuana. CBP has said they simply didn't have the capacity to process more than just a few asylum seekers each day. But a new filing says that CBP was breaking the law and that Department of Homeland Security leadership knew it.
Unlike their characterization of events, it wasn't just a few bad apples. It wasn't just a few officers who were turning away asylum seekers. It actually was a policy and practice that was directed from the highest levels.
The documents detail some Border Patrol agents pushing back against CBP and DHS leadership, asking for the policy to be put in writing. Some of these agents then in turn blew the whistle on the agency and gave depositions for the lawsuit.
The point of all of the turnaways was, as they put it, to slow the flow of asylum seekers, to try to reduce the number of asylum seekers crossing the southern border. And they knew that they couldn't just write that out because it's just in clear violation of the law.
One whistleblower, a CBP agent stationed in Tecate, said asylum seekers were being turned away even though there were available beds and agents to process them. They were then ordered to lie to asylum seekers and say there was no way they could be processed there.
So this isn't a rogue agency at this point. They don't care about any checks put on them by Congress or the courts, and they're really, they've been deployed politically by this administration to shut off all immigration to the United States, but specifically asylum in the United States.
A hearing is scheduled for federal court in San Diego in December. Maxwell Adler, KPBS News.
UC San Diego began to recruit patients this month. It's one location in a worldwide trial of treatments for COVID patients in the early stage of their infection. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani says doctors are looking for therapies to keep the sick from getting sicker.
Patients will come to the Hillcrest campus here at UC San Diego at the Antiviral Research Center and enter a tent that looks exactly like this. While they're inside, they'll be administered any number of antiviral drugs that are involved in this trial, and the same thing will happen at clinical trials worldwide.
We have every place where we could wash our hands and get our patients checked in for the study.
The study is run through the National Institutes of Health, and it's called Active-2. Dr. Davey Smith, the virologist at UC San Diego, is the principal investigator for it. He says this trial is the first of its kind to target patients who aren't already hospitalized.
So the first studies that happened were very much about keeping people from dying once they went into the hospital. And this one is to keep people from ever trying to get into the hospital. So in that setting, we have to find people who are early in their infection.
Smith said one of the therapies being tested is a unique synthetic antibody created specifically to attack the coronavirus.
It's going to be infused in them, so we have to have some space where they can get some infusion. It's going to take a little bit of time where we're also monitoring. The nurse will come in, place the infusion, use our Wi-Fi.
Smith says the first stage of the trial will try to recruit around 200 patients, and each patient will get one type of therapy. The idea is to do a clinical trial at a quick pace that tests out multiple kinds of drugs while being efficient with resources like placebos. UCSD physician Dr. Constance Benson, who's also heading the study, has already spearheaded a global HIV research network.
How do you find patients? And that requires that we have staff who are responsible for outreach, community relations staff. And we specifically hire people who can go to doctors' offices, who can go to testing sites.
Of course, she says worldwide efforts are always challenging, especially in a global pandemic.
There's a lot of pressure on all of the investigators and all of the sites to try and enroll people as quickly as we can so we can have answers for these things fast.
Both Smith and Benson say this type of trial is necessary to find therapies for patients that are in the beginning stages of infection. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
A new farm in the South Bay aims to increase community access to affordable fresh fruit, veggies, and flowers. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us about this farm's unique business structure and how it could point a way forward for urban agriculture.
On a Tuesday afternoon, the Pishka farm stand is open for business.
Like some flowers?
It's one of the few places where people can buy fresh fruit and veggies directly from a farmer in the South Bay.
Perfect. Thank you.
While smaller farms are typically owned by families who often manage their workers, Pishka Farms is different. The workers are the ones who own it.
Everyone's a leader here, or that's how worker co-ops typically are. We all have a decision on our production. We have that control, that immediate control. We decide what to do as a collective and how to proceed as a business.
Jose Alcaraz grew up in San Isidro. He has a degree in environmental engineering, but decided to become a farmer and part owner of a farm after he found out about Pishka 2 years ago.
I found this place and I just never left.
Around a mile from the border, the ocean, and the desert, Pishka sits in the Tijuana River Valley. The year-round growing season means farmers can pack in a lot of produce inside its small footprint and experiment with what will flourish and what won't.
This is where we do all our seedlings. We got some beets, some fennel.
Leonard Vargas is a third-generation farmer in Southern California.
So we're growing a mix of cut flowers and vegetables. So I would say probably 50-50 as what we're doing. We've got a lot of sunflowers right now. We've got marigolds. We're starting to switch over to our cool weather vegetable crops.
Vargas started the farm in 2017 with the idea of making fresher food available to communities that lack access to it.
Really, one of the things that we wanted to do was start to provide vegetables to some of those communities that are in food deserts. This gives us kind of a real close proximity to that, so we can start to move that into those communities, particularly in the South Bay, seems to be struggling with that.
I usually go twice around there.
Shortly after Vargas began leasing the land from the county, he was joined by Cristina Juarez, who's from Tijuana. The farm, like the surrounding area, is bilingual. Together, they realized that a workers' cooperative was the best way forward for the farm.
Creo que se puede hacer un trabajo con más corazón cuando te sientes igual a la otra persona, cuando no estás esperando órdenes, cuando no sientes que te van a regañar porque hiciste algo diferente. Entonces estás poniendo como tu corazón y tu alma y tu conocimiento en algo, ¿no?
If they were going to be working long and hard hours for little pay, they might as well be doing it for themselves and their community. But it hasn't been easy. With 4 worker owners, they're just beginning to pay themselves minimum wage. And nature hasn't exactly been cooperating. When the Tijuana River Valley floods, all the produce it touches has to be thrown out.
We had a little flood that came through here early December of last year and took out all our vegetable crops because we could no longer market them. So we started over again.
So Pishka had to get creative.
So at that point, we decided to go ahead and add cut flowers to our mix so that we could be more sustainable in case of anything else that came along like that, because we are in a floodplain. And then we found that people really liked them, and so we continued to grow them and keep them in our mix.
They now sell their flowers at the farm stand and at shops like Gem Coffee in City Heights.
Do you have a bag?
Yeah, right here. Arely.
The newest worker owner, Eric Rodriguez, also grew up in South San Diego.
These are hot, so be careful.
He was furloughed from his longtime job at the beginning of the pandemic. He started helping with Pishka and, like Jose, soon couldn't bring himself to leave.
Is there enough for another row?
Yeah, we have a tray.
For him, connecting the community to agriculture is a huge part of what Pishka does. They sell and give away saplings for people to plant in their home gardens.
A child came and bought a pepper plant, and then he came back like every week showing me the progress of his pepper plant. And then finally, when he harvested the pepper plant, he ate it, and I was just, I was just like so into it, and that he was so into it. Like I just felt like super powerful. It was super intense, the feeling of joy.
Pishka, whose farm stand is open Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday afternoons in the South Bay, is hoping to kick off a local urban farming movement following the worker cooperative model, especially among people of color.
We're an example to other POC that they can be part of a business and part of an industry, because whether we want to or not, we're still part of the system, but in our own way, with our ownership, and that's just, it feels really good, and I feel a lot more people, more farmers should definitely feel that.
Max Nadler,
Gracias.
KPBS News.
Hope you're having an excellent Friday afternoon. Thanks for staying with us here at KPBS News. I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez. As we go through the next couple of days, we will continue to talk about and notice the slow decrease of temperature highs during the next couple of afternoons in inland areas along the coast. We're going to have a few more low clouds out there, more fog in a couple spots, and overall, the onshore flow will continue across Southern California. Here's a quick look at the satellite and radar image from a couple hours ago. Notice that we did have some of those high clouds pressing across central and even parts of Southern California and across the central section of the state, across the Sierra. The radar did pick up a little bit of wet weather out there moving through. Looking at our temperatures for tonight, Oceanside 57 degrees. As we take you a little bit inland towards Borrego Springs, we're going to see those lows near 76 degrees. Here's a quick look at Saturday. Very seasonable across Northern California. The big concern will continue to be the smoky conditions out there from the wildfires, and across the southern portion of our state heading into the Four Corners, it's still going to be a warm day out there. Borrego Springs, triple digits for you, 106. Escondido coming up to 92 degrees. Eventually, as we go through the next couple of days, those temperatures will be cooling down to the average for our region. Along the coast, you could see 81 on Saturday. By the time we head into the early part of next week, a few more clouds, 76 degrees for the high. A quick look at in inland areas, 93 for Saturday. Then we're talking mid-80s for Monday and Tuesday of next week. Dry conditions will continue with us even across the mountains. Keep in mind some of those winds could be gusty as well, not only in the mountains but also across the deserts as we go through the next couple of afternoons here for our weekend. Temperature highs will be in the mid to low 70s for Sunday and Monday. Here's your forecast across the deserts. Triple digits, mostly sunny conditions out there. And of course, the heat will continue out there.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is reversing a controversial piece of coronavirus guidance that caused a backlash. The CDC dropped language posted last month that said people who didn't feel sick didn't need to get tested. Now it says anyone who has been in close contact with an infected person should get tested. The CDC calls the change a clarification that was needed because of asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic transmission. An update now on our lead story, the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The 87-year-old died from complications of cancer in New York. Jessica Schneider has a look back at her groundbreaking life and career.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg's rise from a humble Brooklyn neighborhood to the nation's highest court was a classic American story.
What is the difference between a bookkeeper in New York's Garment District and a Supreme Court Justice? Just one generation, my mother's life and mine bear witness. Where else but in America could that happen?
She was smart, tied for first in her class at Columbia Law School. But in the late 50s and early 60s, the glass ceiling stood firm.
There were 3 strikes against her. First, she was a woman. Second, she was Jewish. Third, she had a young child.
She turned to teaching law and fighting gender discrimination for the ACLU.
Very much with the model of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund led by Thurgood Marshall. She had this idea that you have to build precedent step by step.
In 1980, Ginsburg became a federal appellate court judge.
So help me God.
So help me God.
13 years later, she was named to the Supreme Court by President Clinton, the second woman on the bench. The first, Sandra Day O'Connor, was glad to see her.
The minute Justice Ginsburg came to the court, we were 9 justices. It wasn't 7 and then the women. And it was a great relief to me.
As a justice, Ginsburg consistently voted in favor of abortion access and civil rights. Perhaps her best-known work on the court, writing the 1996 landmark decision to strike down the Virginia Military Institute's ban on admitting women. She was also known for her bold dissents, like the one she wrote when the court stopped the 2000 Florida ballot recount, struck down a key provision of the Voting Rights Act, and ended the contraception mandate for some businesses under the Affordable Care Act.
In our view, the court does not comprehend or is indifferent to the insidious way in which women can be victims of pay discrimination.
In 2007, the High Court ruled against Lilly Ledbetter, a factory supervisor at a tire plant, in a high-profile pay discrimination case. Ginsburg urged Congress to take up the issue in her dissent. 20 months later, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was the first bill that President Obama signed into law. After Justice John Paul Stevens retired in 2010, Ginsburg became the most senior of her liberal colleagues. But she didn't slow down. Stephen Colbert discovered that the hard way, trying to keep up with RBG's famously tough workouts.
I'm cramping and I'm working out with an 85-year-old woman.
Ginsburg hired a trainer after treatment for colorectal cancer in the late 90s. In 2018, doctors treating the justice for broken ribs discovered cancerous growths on her lung. The surgery was successful, but the recovery caused Ginsburg to miss oral arguments at the Supreme Court for the first time in her career. She was also treated several times for pancreatic cancer, but always stayed up on her court work. Even after losing her husband of 56 years to cancer, Ginsburg was back on the bench the next morning.
I love the work I do. I think I have the best job in the world for a lawyer. I respect all of my colleagues and genuinely like most of them.
Her best friend on the bench was the late Justice Antonin Scalia, her ideological opposite.
What's not to like? Except her views of the law, of course.
They shared a laugh about Ginsburg drinking wine before nodding off at the State of the Union.
I wasn't 100% sober because before we went to the State of the Union, we had dinner together, and Justice Kennedy brought in...
Well, that's the first intelligent thing you've done.
In her later years, she gained rock star status with millennials, thanks to social media.
It was beyond my wildest imagination that I would one day become the notorious RBG.
The nickname was a play on the name of the late rapper, the notorious B.I.G. There were books, clothing, tattoos, even a species of praying mantis in her honor, along with a recurring SNL sketch.
You just got Ginsburg.
There was a feature film on the basis of sex and a documentary produced by CNN. RBG was an unexpected box office hit and gave the justice an even larger platform to share her lifelong mission of gender equality.
People ask me sometimes, when will there be enough women on the court? And my answer is, when there are 9.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.